الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ووهبنا لداود سليمان نعم العبد إنه أواب إذ عرض عليه بالعشي الصافنات الجياد فقال إني أحببت حب الخير عن ذكر ربي حتى توارت بالحجاب ردوها علي فطفق مسحا بالسوق والأعناق صدق الله مولانا العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وأزواجه وذرياته وَوَهَبْنَا لِدَاوُودَ سُلَيْمَانَ and we gifted Sulayman Alayhis salam to Dawood Alayhis salam. Ni'm al-abd, a fine, excellent slave indeed. Innahu awwab, he was certainly one who repented or one who was very obedient. We continue with the commentary of Surah Saad and we have reached verse number 30. In the previous verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made a mention of one of his great prophets, Sayyiduna Dawood alayhi salatu wassalam. And here from verse number 30, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now begins to make a mention of another great prophet, Sayyiduna Sulayman alayhis salatu wassalam. And Sayyiduna Sulayman alayhis salatu wassalam, he is the son of Sayyiduna Dawood alayhis salam. So the father's mention was made. Now Allah Ta'ala makes a mention of the son of Dawood alayhi salam. And this is something which was explained before also, that as far as the different prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are concerned, then only regarding Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam we find that his entire story from beginning to end can be found in one place, in Surah Yusuf. But the remaining prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah ta'ala has mentioned different parts of their lives in different parts of the Qur'an. So even regarding Sulayman alayhi salatu wassalam, likewise Dawood alayhi salam, here in Surah Saad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala touches upon certain aspects. And we find a mention of other aspects regarding Dawood alayhi salam, likewise Sulayman alayhi salam in other parts of the Qur'an also. So as far as these verses in Surah Saad are concerned, Allah Ta'ala begins by saying, وَوَهَبْنَا لِدَاوُودَ سُلَيْمَانَ, we gifted Sulayman alayhi salam as a son to Dawood alayhi salam. So the words which have been used here is that we gifted Sulayman Alayhis salam to Dawood Alayhis salam. One manner in which he was a gift is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses a couple with children, then children is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yahabu liman yasha'u inatha. Allah ta'ala mentions in another place that Allah ta'ala gives whomsoever He wishes female children. وَيَهَبُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ الذُّكُورَ. And Allah ta'ala gives whomsoever He wishes male children. So female children are also a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and male children are also a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And further on Allah ta'ala says, أَوْ يُزَوِّجُهُمْ ذُكْرَانًا وَإِنَاثًا. That Allah ta'ala gives whomsoever He wishes both male children as well and female children as well. وَيَجْعَلُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ أَقِيمًا. And whomsoever Allah ta'ala wishes, then He keeps them barren. And they are not blessed with any children. Innahu alimun qadir. Indeed, Allah ta'ala is alim, He is the all-knowing, and He is qadir, He is the all-powerful. Now this verse of the Qur'an gives great solace to each and every individual, because every couple after marriage will find themselves in one of these four conditions. Either they will be blessed with only female children, either only male children, either both male and female, or either no children at all. So Allah Ta'ala is saying He is Alim and He is the all-knowing. So this is our belief in the Qur'an, that Allah Ta'ala Himself is Alim, He is all-knowing. Now when He is all-knowing, then He has full knowledge that in which home should I grant only female children. So if there is a home in which there are only females, there are only girls, and this couple, they begin to think to themselves that why is Allah Ta'ala not blessing us with a boy? Then all they need to tell themselves is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the reason behind this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that for us it is not befitting to have a boy. And this is the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they should remain happy with this decree of Allah. Likewise, if there is a home in which there are only boys and there are no girls, and this couple desire to have a baby daughter, then again they should tell themselves that Allah Ta'ala is fully aware that for us it is best to have only boys and no girls. If Allah Ta'ala blesses a couple with both boys and girls, they should remain happy with this decree. And if Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala decides no children for a particular couple, then they should also remain happy with this decree of Allah Ta'ala and tell themselves that Allah Ta'ala knows best, that for us it is better if we do not have children. And a person should not try and fight the decree of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala by going through such avenues which are haram and impermissible in order to try and either get a boy or get a girl or have children. If through permissible means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows a couple with children, then they should be grateful upon this. And if after permissible means it is not possible to have children, then they should remain happy with this decree of Allah ta'ala also. So anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here mentions that we gifted Dawood alayhi salam, Sulayman alayhis salatu was salam. So he was a child, and a child is a gift from Allah ta'ala. And on top of this, if this child is a pious child, then this is a second gift. One is that couple who are blessed with a child, but the child is not a pious child. And another is that couple that they are blessed with a child, and that child is a pious child. So this is a second gift. So Allah Ta'ala blessed Dawood alayhi salam with Sulayman alayhi salam, and not only was this a child, this was a pious child. And on top of this, if this child, when the father sees the child growing up, and the father sees that my son or my daughter, from a worldly point of view, is happy, they are living a happy life, a prosperous life, then this is another gift. So Sulayman alayhi salatu was salam, not only was he a pious child, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made him a king. So from a worldly point of view, Sulayman alayhi salatu was salam had a very affluent life. And on top of this, if this child is intelligent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed him with intelligence, then this is another gift. And Sulayman alayhi salatu was salam, Allah ta'ala says, فَفَهَّمْنَاهَا Sulayman. We granted Sulayman alayhi salatu was salam a deep understanding. We granted him intelligence. On top of this, if this child has been blessed with the knowledge pertaining to the deen, Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا دَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ إِلْمًا. We gave Dawood alayhi salam and Sulayman alayhi salam ilm. So this is another gift, that we granted him the gift of ilm and the gift of knowledge, which is even more greater than the gift of the wealth or the materialistic items of this world. This is why Sayyiduna Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to say, Radina qismat al-jabbari fina. He used to say, we are very pleased with the distribution of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What distribution? That lana ilmun walil juhali malu. He says, when we look around, we find two types of people. Certain people, Allah Ta'ala blesses them with more wealth of this world, but they are deprived of ilm. Allah Ta'ala does not grant them the knowledge of the Qur'an, the knowledge of hadith, the knowledge of deen. And you find a second category, that Allah Ta'ala has not blessed them with that amount of wealth, but He has granted them ilm. So Ali radiallahu anhu says that I am from this category, that I haven't been given that amount of wealth, but I have been given a great amount of ilm and knowledge. So he would say, Radina qismat al-jabbari fina. We are very pleased with the distribution of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Lana ilmun. For us is ilm. Walil juhali malu. And for the ignorant is wealth. Why are we happy with this distribution? فَإِنَّ الْمَالَ يَفْنَى عَنْ قَرِيبٍ. Because wealth will very soon come to an end. Either this person will spend this wealth and this wealth will finish. Or it's possible that a thief robs this wealth before this person can even benefit from this wealth. He could become bankrupt. And the most that will happen is that this wealth will remain with this person until he breathes his last. But as soon as he dies, now he will have to part from this wealth. So this wealth is temporary. فَإِنَّ الْمَالَ يَفْنَى عَنْ قَرِيبٍ وَالْإِلْمُ بَاقٍ لَا يَزَالُ. But as far as ilm is concerned, this ilm will remain with this person forever and ever. It will benefit him and it will be his companion in this world also, and it will benefit him in the grave also. In the grave, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam would mention to Sayyiduna Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu that Ya Aba Hurairah ta'allam al-Qur'an wa allimhu an-nas. O Abu Hurairah, learn the Qur'an, and after learning the Qur'an, teach the Qur'an to the people. وَلَا تَزَالُ كَذَلِكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْمَوْتِ. And carry on learning and teaching the Qur'an until death comes to you. There is no retirement age for this. In every other field a person will retire, but when it comes to learning and teaching, this continues until a person breathes his last. This is why when Imam Abu Yusuf rahmatullahi alayhi was in his final moments, and one of his students came to visit him, then even at this moment when he was about to leave from this world, he did not think to himself that I am extremely ill, I am in the final moments of my life. Teaching will take place when I am in the class. This is not class time. No. Their teaching was all the time. It wasn't just when they were in class. So when this student came to visit him, he said to his student that I have a question for you. And when you go to pelt the pillars, when you go to perform Hajj, is it more virtuous to pelt these pillars whilst you're on foot or whilst you are mounted on an animal? So the student replied that it's more virtuous to pelt the pillars whilst you are on foot. He replied that what you have said is wrong. This is how fresh his knowledge was even in the very final few seconds of his life. So upon this the student replied, well, there's only two options. So if to pelt these pillars on foot is wrong, then the answer has to be when you are mounted on an animal. So even upon this he replied that even this answer is wrong. And thereafter he said to the student that this question and this answer, it requires some explanation. And the explanation is that if you are pelting a pillar, after which another pillar is going to be pelted, then on that occasion it is more better that you pelt the pillar whilst you are on foot. For example, on the first day you only pelt one pillar. So after this one pillar you are not going to pelt another pillar. And on the remaining days when you pelt all three pillars, then after the first pillar you are going to pelt another pillar. After the second pillar you are going to pelt another pillar. But after the third pillar you are not going to pelt another pillar. So he said, if you are going to pelt a pillar and after this you are not going to pelt another pillar, then it's more virtuous to pelt the pillar whilst you are mounted on an animal. And if you are pelting a pillar and after pelting this pillar you are going to pelt another pillar, then it's more virtuous to do it whilst you are on foot. Now the student thought to himself that I have come to visit my teacher thinking he is extremely ill. And he has gone into such a deep discussion here that my head is spinning. Just imagine what his condition must be. You and I are all healthy here, but these sort of masail will make our head spin also. So imagine when a person is extremely ill and he's trying to discuss this and teach this to a student. But this was a passion which they had. Allama Anwar Shah Kashmiri rahmatullahi alayhi, regarding him, it was mentioned that during his old age, this rumor spread in Deoband that he has passed away. So some of his students, they went rushing to see that has Allama Anwar Shah Kashmiri rahmatullahi alayhi really passed away. When they entered his room, they saw that he was sat there with one of his kitabs reading. So he hadn't passed away, it was a rumor. So upon this, they asked him that at this age and with all the knowledge that you possess, which mas'ala or which ruling is there that you are unaware of? And if there was something that you wanted to know, you could have just called us and we would have found it for you. Why are you going through all of this in this old age, in your sickness? So upon this he raised his head and he said to his students that, what can I say to you? This is also an illness. This is also an addiction. I am addicted to my books. So even in this old age, until I do not read and I do not study, I do not feel at ease. So Imam Abu Yusuf rahmatullahi alayhi, when he mentioned this mas'ala to his student, then his student thought it's best I leave from here. Otherwise this discussion could go on and it could have an impact on my teacher's health. So he asked for permission to leave. And he had just left the door when he heard from inside the house the women crying and saying that Imam Abu Yusuf has passed away. So until the last moment of his life, he continued in this endeavor of learning and teaching. And regarding Imam Muhammad rahmatullahi alayhi, these are both the most famous students of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. That this is how Imam Abu Yusuf left the world. How did Imam Muhammad leave the world? That Imam Muhammad, it is mentioned regarding him that after his demise, he was seen in a dream. So the person who saw the dream, they asked that, how are your final moments? So he said that I was engrossed in trying to understand a mas'ala regarding a mukatab, which is a type of slave. And he said, I was so engrossed that after I finished understanding that ruling in that kitab, when I raised my head, I realized that I am no longer in the world, I am now in the hereafter. So the angel of death extracted his soul and he did not even realize. He only realized after he finished reading. Just as in this day and age, when a person is so engrossed in his phone, he has no idea what's happening around him. Sometimes a child will eat the entire meal when the child is engrossed in the phone. And if you were to ask this child after that, what did you eat? The child will not know. So in the same way, these people, this was their attachment with this knowledge of deen. That they would become so engrossed in there that they would have no idea what's happening around them. Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi, he was once while studying, his family came and said somebody has presented some dates as a gift. There was a large tray of dates. So Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi said to them that leave the dates here on the side. And thereafter he continued to study, and while studying, without realizing what he was doing, he began to eat the dates. So he's eating one date and he's reading, he's eating another date, he's reading. And like this, he ate every single date which was present in that tray. Why? Because he completely forgot. And this became the means of his demise. So these people, until the final moments, this was their endeavor. Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi, somebody came to him in his final moments and they asked him that, كيف أصبحت أيها الإمام, O Imam, how have you woke up this morning? He had been ill for many days. He was asking him that, today what is your condition? So what is you and I that we would reply in our own words that I'm feeling better or I am still very ill? But these people, look at their reply. He replied in Arabic poetry. And even this poetry was full of knowledge. He said, أصبحت من الدنيا راحلة ولإخواني مفارقة ولكأس المنية شاربة لا أدري روحي تصير إلى الجنة فأهنئها أو إلى النار فأعزيها. He said, أصبحت من الدنيا راحلة. I have woke up this morning feeling that now I am traveling towards the hereafter. The journey towards the grave has begun. وَلِإِخْوَانِي مُفَارِقَةً, and very soon I am now going to be separated from my brothers. وَلِكَأْسِ الْمَنِيَّةِ شَارِبَةً, and very soon I am going to drink from the cup of death. And thereafter he said, لَا أَدْرِي رُوحِي تَسِيرُ إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ فَأُهَنِّئُهَا أَوْ إِلَى النَّارِ فَأُعَزِّيهَا. And I do not know, is my soul going towards paradise, or is my soul going towards the hellfire? If it is going towards paradise, I can congratulate my soul. And if it is going towards the hellfire, then I should console my soul. But because I do not know which way it is going, then I am in this dilemma. In other words, he explained the hadith that al-imanu bayna al-khawfi wal-raja. Iman is between hope and fear. That on one side a person has hope also that Allah Ta'ala will forgive me. Allah Ta'ala is very merciful. But at the same time he also has this fear that if Allah Ta'ala wishes, he can punish me. So I was mentioning Nabi Sallallahu Alayhi Wasallam said to Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu that learn the Qur'an and teach the Qur'an. And carry on doing this until you breathe your last. Why? If you carry on doing this until you breathe your last, then فَإِنْ أَتَاكَ الْمَوْتُ وَأَنْتَ كَذَلِكَ زَارَتِ الْمَلَائِكَةُ قَبْرَكَ كَمَا يُزَارُ بَيْتُ الْعَتِيقِ. The angels will come and visit your grave just as thousands of people in Makkah al-Mukarramah visit the Kaaba. Just as we see in Makkah that there are thousands of people doing tawaf of the Kaaba. This will be the scene by your grave, but it will not be human beings, it will be angels. And inside the grave, أَوْحَى اللَّهُ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will inspire the earth and He will say to the earth, أَلَّا تَأْكُلِي لَحْمَهُ, that do not eat the flesh of this person. Normally after a person is buried, then the body decomposes. But that person who beautified his heart with the knowledge of the Qur'an, Allah Ta'ala says to the earth that do not eat the flesh of this person. So this part of the grave, this part of this land, turns towards Allah and says to Allah, كَيْفَ آكُلُ لَحْمَهُ وَكَلَامُكَ فِي جَوْفِهِ, that, oh Allah, how can I eat the flesh of this person when your Qur'an is present inside his heart? So even in the grave, this person will benefit from this ilm. On the occasion of the Battle of Uhud, 70 Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'een were martyred. Then due to certain reasons, 35 graves were dug. So in each grave, 2 companions were buried. So 35 graves were dug, and by every grave, 2 bodies of the companions were placed. And thereafter Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was called so that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam can inspect as to how each sahabi is being buried inside that particular grave. So when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam came to each grave, the question which he asked was, أَيُّهُمَا أَكْثَرُ أَخْذًا لِلْقُرْآنِ, that from the 2, which one possessed more knowledge of the Qur'an? فَإِذَا أُشِيرَ إِلَىٰ أَحَدِهِمَا قَدَّمَهُ فِي اللَّحْدِ, and when the indication was made that he had more knowledge of the Qur'an than him, then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam would say that give him more honor and respect and put him in the grave first. So look, even in the grave, this knowledge is benefiting this person. So Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu would say that this knowledge is something which is never going to come to an end. It will always benefit a person in this world also and in the hereafter also. So Sulayman Alayhis salatu wassalam was also granted ilm, and finally Sulayman Alayhis salatu wassalam was also a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was bestowed with the mantle of prophethood. So وَوَهَبْنَا لِدَاوُودَ Sulayman, we gifted Dawood alayhis salam this amazing son Sulayman alayhis salam. That it wasn't just one gift of a child, he was a child which was one gift. Upon this he was also pious. Upon this, from a worldly point of view, Allah Ta'ala had made him a king. On top of this, he had intelligence. On top of this, he had knowledge. And on top of this, he was also a prophet of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So, ni'mal abd, what an excellent servant Sulayman alayhi salatu wassalam was. Innahu awwab, he was one who was awwab. Some commentators of the Qur'an mentioned that awwab here means muti, that he was someone who was very obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِذْ أُرِضَ عَلَيْهِ بِالْعَشِيِّ الصَّافِنَاتُ الْجِيَادِ. Now in the next 3 verses, Allah Ta'ala mentions one incident from the life of Sulayman Alayhis salam. إِذْ عُرِضَ عَلَيْهِ, it is worth mentioning the time when purebred horses of the finest caliber were presented before him one evening. إِذْ عُرِضَ عَلَيْهِ بِالْعَشِيِّ الصَّافِنَاتُ الْجِيَادِ. فَقَالَ إِنِّي, so he said, indeed, إِنِّي أَحْبَبْتُ حُبَّ الْخَيْرِ عَنْ ذِكْرِ رَبِّي, I have given preference to the wealth of this world, meaning the horses, over the remembrance of my Rabb. حَتَّى تَوَارَتْ بِالْحِجَابِ, until it, meaning the sun, hid, meaning set, behind the veil, meaning the horizon. رُدُّوهَا عَلَيْهِ, he then commanded his servants, saying, return them, meaning return the horses, alayya, to me. فَطَفِقَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّوقِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ, he then began to strike their legs and their manes or their necks. The majority of the commentators of the Qur'an mention that on one occasion, Sulayman Alayhis salatu was salam, he was inspecting the horses which were being prepared for a battle, for jihad. And because he was the king, then he would also overlook all the other departments which were running under him. And from amongst them, one was the department of the Ministry of Defense. So the weapons, likewise the horses, Sulayman alayhi salatu was salam, on this particular occasion was inspecting the horses. And the commentators of the Qur'an have mentioned different opinions as to how many horses there were. Some have said that there were 20, some have said there were 1,000, some have also said 20,000. Likewise, some commentators of the Qur'an mentioned that these horses, they had wings. They were very elegant and very amazing horses. Whatever the case is, in the Qur'an we find Allah Ta'ala uses two words for these horses, as-safinat and al-jiyad. The word safinat, which here has been translated as purebred horses. Some commentators of the Qur'an mention that these horses, the word safinat here refers to those horses which are known as asil. So asil, they are such horses that they stand on 3 feet. And as far as the 4th foot or the 4th hoof is concerned, the 4th leg, the horse puts no pressure on this 4th foot. It stands on 3 legs or on 3 feet without putting pressure on the 4th. And this is a sign of a horse of a very high caliber. So this is what safinat refers to. And as far as jihad is concerned, then one commentary of jihad is that jihad is the plural of jayyid, and the translation for this will be that they were thoroughbred horses. And according to a second group of commentators, jiyad is the plural of jawad, which means that these horses, they were very swift, they were very fast. So from all of this we can understand that the horses were of a very high caliber. They were very good horses. Now these horses, they were presented before Sulayman Alayhis salatu was salam. And Sulayman Alayhis salatu was salam, he began to inspect each horse. That is this horse going to be good enough for the battle? And he became so engrossed in this action that before he could complete this action, the sun set, which means that it was time for Maghrib. The day came to an end. Now, The next verse says that إِنِّي أَحْبَبْتُ حُبَّ الْخَيْرِ عَنْ ذِكْرِ رَبِّي حَتَّى تَوَارَتْ بِالْحِجَابِ. According to one opinion of the commentators, Sulayman alayhis salatu was salam, he had some sort of ma'mul and some sort of practice, some sort of way in which he would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this practice was not farz, it was not compulsory, it was an optional practice. But because he became so engrossed in inspecting the horses, the sun set and the day came to an end. So now for that particular day, it was not going to be possible for him to carry out that practice which he normally would do. For example, on a Saturday, it is our practice to have the Dars of the Qur'an between Asr and Maghrib. Now if a person became very engrossed in something else, and before he knows it, the sun sets, and he misses the Dars. So he's missed this practice of his. So although this practice is not compulsory, it was an optional practice. So likewise, Sulayman alayhi salam also had an optional practice which he would carry out each day. But on this particular day, he could not carry out this practice and the sun set. So this is one opinion. And a second opinion is that it was actually a farz act which he missed. Either the Asr Salah or whatever was ordained in that particular Sharia. Now if it was a farz act, then the question will arise that how is it possible for a Nabi and a Prophet to miss out a compulsory act? So the answer to this, which the commentators of the Qur'an have mentioned, is that if a person he discards a farz due to forgetfulness, then this is not a sin. If a person completely forgets and the thought does not even cross his mind, then he is not going to be questioned for this, because we are not questioned for those things which are not within our ability. One is that a person, he misses the Asr Salah intentionally, and one is it completely goes out of his mind and he completely forgets about it. So Sulayman alayhi salatu was salam either missed an optional act which was one of his practices, or he missed out a farz act. But the more preferred opinion is that this was a optional act which Sulayman alayhi salatu was salam missed due to being engrossed in inspecting these horses. Now, after missing this practice, after the sun set, when Sulayman alayhi salatu was salam realized that I have missed this practice of mine, this ibadah and this worship of mine, and due to his high rank and his high status, he decided to punish himself. That I need to punish myself so that in future I do not make the same mistake again. And how did he punish himself? So the manner in which he punished himself was that he decided to slaughter all of these horses. That it was these horses which made me neglectful of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as a result, I am going to slaughter these horses now. And this is what we find inside the hadith reported by Imam Tabrani rahmatullahi alayhi, that Sayyiduna Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala anhu has mentioned the hadith that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says regarding this verse of the Qur'an, فَتَفِقَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّوقِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, قَطَعَ السُّوقَهَا, that Sulayman alayhi salam, he cut off the legs of the horse or the horses, وَأَعْنَاقَهَا, and the necks of these horses, بِالسَّيْفِ, with a sword. So he slaughtered these horses. Now upon this, the commentators of the Qur'an, they say that a question will arise in the minds of people, that a person slaughters many horses, is this not wasting one's property? Just because these horses became a means of a person being neglectful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he was to slaughter all of these horses, is this not wasting property. It's like if a person has 10 cars and he feels they are making me neglectful and he just throws them all away. So would it not be better that you give it in charity, or you do it in a way in which you are not wasting something? So they replied that the answer to this, Allama Alusi Baghdadi rahmatullahi alayhi has mentioned that the answer to this question is that just as in our Sharia it is permissible to do qurbani and slaughter goats, cows and camels, that in the same way in the Sharia of Sulayman Alayhis salam it was also permissible to slaughter horses. So the horses were slaughtered and the meat was then given to either the poor people or people that could consume the meat of these horses. So it wasn't something that went to waste. So this is one tafsir regarding these verses. And there is also a second tafsir, the likes of Allama ibn Jarir, Tabari rahmatullahi alayhi and Imam Razi rahmatullahi alayhi have narrated from Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, who say that horses were presented to Sulayman alayhi salatu was salam, which were prepared for jihad. And when he saw them, then he became very pleased that these horses, each one of them, they look very good, and the qualities of these horses are also very good. So he became very pleased to see them. And when he saw these horses, then he said that my connection and my attachment with these horses is due to my Allah. If we look at this verse, it says, Inni ahbabtu hubbal khayri an dhikri rabbi. Indeed, I have given preference to the wealth of this world. I have given preference to these horses an dhikri rabbi, over the remembrance of my Rabb. So this is the first tafsir. The first commentary is that I gave preference to the horses over this particular ibadah. And the second tafsir is that I have given preference to these horses due to the remembrance of my Rabb. That the only reason I am attached to them is because they are also something to do with deen. They are going to assist the Muslims in the battle, in jihad. So the verse can be interpreted in two ways. And after mentioning this, it so happened that each horse, after it was presented to Sulayman alayhis salam, it was taken away. Now all the horses had been taken away. Sulayman alayhis salam was very pleased by what he had seen. So he said, Rudduha alayya. Rudduha alayya. Return the horses back to me. Bring the horses back. And after bringing the horses back, فَتَفِقَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّوقِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ. So how did we translate? He then began to strike the legs and the necks of these horses. Now if we take the first commentary, what it means is that he cut off the legs and he cut off the necks. And if we take the second commentary, then what it means is he began to pat the necks and the legs of these horses because he liked them very much. So there are both variations here, there are both possibilities. But because the hadith of Hazrat Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu ta'ala anhu is present, Hazrat Mufti Shafi Sahib rahmatullahi alayhi mentions that this is a hadith marfu, and because this is a hadith marfu, then it's better that the first tafsir is given priority over the second tafsir. Hatta tawarat bil hijab, until it hid behind the veil. So again, until it hid behind the veil, this can also have two meanings. There are two tafsirs here as well. One is hatta tawarat refers to the horses. That until, the first commentary is it's the sun. That until the sun hid behind the veil, meaning behind the horizon, meaning until the sun set. So he remained engrossed in this action until the sun set. And the second commentary is that tawarat here is not referring to the sun, it refers to the horses. That until the horses did not go behind the veil, Sulayman alayhis salam remained engrossed in this particular action. The tawarat can refer to horses also, it can refer to sun also, although the preferred opinion is that it refers to the sun. And Rudduha alayya, that return the horses back to me. So I've already explained, return the horses back to me. But some commentators of the Qur'an mention that the Rudduha here does not refer to the horses, it refers to the sun. The Sulayman Alayhis salam, when he saw that the sun has set and he's missed his particular practice for that day, then he made dua to Allah and he said to Allah, or he instructed the angels that return the sun back. So the sun has set, but bring the sun back so that I can carry out that practice and thereafter make the sun set again. So Rudduha alayya, one meaning is return the horses to me, and a second commentary is Rudduha alayya, return the sun back so that I can carry out the practice. But again, the first opinion is more better than the second one. Allama Alusi says that the second one, that bring the sun back, this cannot be proven from the Quran or the Hadith. Now, from these verses, Hazrat Hakim al-Ummah, Hazrat Thanwi rahmatullahi alayhi mentions that one lesson that we learn is that it is permissible for a person to punish one's nafs by depriving it from something permissible if the person's nafs becomes a means of him being neglectful of Allah Ta'ala in some sort of ibadah. This is to tame the nafs and to train the nafs that I am in control, you are not in control. Otherwise, if a person will not punish the nafs, then the nafs, an-nafsu ka-tifli, the nafs is like a child. So just as when you know that this child, I have told the child once, second time, 3 times, and the child is not listening, then you punish the child. And the reason you punish the child is you're not being cruel to the child. Sometimes it's kind to be cruel. You need carrot and stick, you need both. So even with the nafs, a person has to always keep control over his nafs, and he has to always look that is my nafs, am I controlling the nafs or is the nafs controlling me? So this is something which we find, for example, that on one occasion Imam Malik rahmatullahi alayhi narrates this hadith that Abu Jaham, he came to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and he presented a Syrian garment to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this garment had some designs on it. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam wore this garment, went into the masjid, and he began performing the salah. After the salah, he came back, he removed the garment, and he said to Aisha radiallahu anha that give this garment back to Abu Jaham. Why? Because during salah, my attention was going towards the design which was on the garment. So look, to wear a garment with a design is permissible. But because it was becoming a means of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam's attention going away from the salah, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam deprived him of that action, of that thing which was permissible. And likewise, it is mentioned regarding Abu Talha radiallahu anhu that he had a very large farm with many trees in it. And in this farm he was performing salah when he heard a bird inside one of the trees making noise. It was flapping its wings. So Abu Talha radiallahu anhu's attention went towards this bird and towards this tree. So after salah, he gave the entire orchard or the entire garden or farm away in charity. Why? Because it was becoming a hindrance in his salah. So from these incidents we learn that a person, not only is it permissible, rather it's preferable that he punishes himself when something becomes a hindrance in him practicing upon the deen. But this is something which has to be done under the guardianship of a master in this field, of a sheikh who knows how to do this. Otherwise, it is possible that a person will not know what the limits are and he may carry out such a thing upon himself which is not permissible. So it's a completely different field, but I have just indicated towards it because it's under the commentary of this ayah. Another lesson which we learn here is that when a person has been granted leadership and he is a ruler, then the more vast his kingdom becomes, it's natural that he will have different departments and there will be a different person in charge of each department. But this does not mean that the main ruler or the main leader, he becomes oblivious of what's happening in each department. Sulayman Alayhis also had these departments, but because he was the main king, he ensured that he inspected every department, even though those departments had their own ruler or their own leader. This is something we find in the life of Umar radiallahu anhu, that he was Amirul Mu'mineen, and the kingdom had spread very vast, so there were governors everywhere. But this does not mean that if Umar radiallahu anhu made a certain person a governor, then he left that governor to that place and he did not ask about that place. No, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu ensured that he kept a very stern eye upon every place, that I've appointed this governor here, but what's happening, that's something which I will be asked for on the day of Qiyamah. So somebody who is in charge, he needs to ensure that even though he has placed someone in a particular position, that does not mean he becomes oblivious of that. He needs to continue to ensure that everything is going according to plan. And finally, one final lesson which the commentators of the Qur'an have mentioned under the commentary of these verses is that at the time of one worship, it is an error to engage in another worship. For example, at the time of Jumu'ah, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِذَا نُودِيَ لِلصَّلَاةِ مِنْ يَوْمِ الْجُمُعَةِ, that when the adhan for Jumu'ah is called out, فَاسْعَوْا إِلَىٰ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, then hasten towards the dhikr of Allah ta'ala. So hasten towards the masjid for the Jumu'ah salah. So at this time, the likes of Mufti Shafi Sahib rahmatullahi alayhi mentioned that once the adhan for Jumu'ah has been called, now even if a person was to engage himself in the tilawah and the recitation of the Qur'an, or in some sort of nafal salah, then even this will be regarded as an error, because this is not the time for recitation of the Qur'an. This is not the time for nafal salah. This is now the time to be inside the masjid, and the attention should be towards the khatib, towards the imam on the day of Jumu'ah. So when it's time for one ibadah, then it is an error to engage in another ibadah. So these are some lessons which have been derived from these verses. We make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grants us the true understanding. After this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions another aspect from the life of Sulayman Alayhis salam, which we'll inshallah discuss in next week's lesson. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our sitting here today, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the ability to make our lives in accordance to all the teachings which are present in the Quran. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.